Here we go again. Another talk. So, time flies at this particular time of the year. We know that because there's lots of flies outside. But it's amazing just getting closer and closer to an end of a retreat. But there's always another retreat next time. And anyway, all the retreats we do, we build up momentum. And sometimes it just happens that the paycheck comes when we get home, or sometimes on the journey home. It's amazing just what happens. You can't predict these things unless you really understand the cause and effect. This is a fundamental part of Buddhism, the way that the Buddha saw that everything just has its cause. If you understand the cause, and then you can understand what the effect is, you can understand how this actually works. And we can disturb and interfere with this causal process, and many of you have experienced that on this retreat. That you may be getting into a peaceful meditation, and then you sort of start to get a bit scared, or you start to do something. I did mention that I wanted to speak a little bit more about those nimittas and what happens at the end. And please don't start complaining that, why does Ajahn Brahm talk about these nimittas? They just create more craving inside of me and feel more, I just did really well, I got a beautiful breath, I feel so content and happy, now I feel I've got to do nimittas. But the point is that these things happen naturally, whether you want them or you don't want them, whether you plan for them or you don't plan for them, it's just what happens in life. And so it's important for me to actually mention what these are and how they work, and what the purpose of them are. And of course those lights which appear in the mind, beautiful lights, when they first come they can be all sorts of things, but you can use those eye shades and you know that this cannot be sort of imagination. It cannot be from things outside. It's a mind-created object. And so one can learn how to work with these things. Now, first of all, if that nimitta is scary, please don't get scared. It's only a mind-made object. You can play around with it. And my classic story was years and years ago that I was meditating and I got a nimitta. It was reasonably calm and peaceful. You don't have to be perfectly peaceful. You don't have to shut down the five senses totally. And I should have mentioned this simile at the beginning. Just so it's a bit visual simile for you so you can understand it with more clarity. It's like this hand represents the five senses. And this is the sixth sense, the mind, the citta it's called. Usually, because we spend so much time, so much effort, and give so much importance to our five senses, to seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, that dominates our life, that they get so much power and energy. They're really strong, they're really big, and dominate our life. And our poor little mind is down here somewhere. And so a lot of time we can't even see it. It's almost invisible for us. But what happens in this meditation is that we don't sort of indulge the five senses that much. So they start to get subdued. The sounds, there's not much sounds going on over here. Not like what it's going to be really loud when you go sort of outside of this monastery tomorrow or the next day. And you eat, but it's not only once or twice a day, not even snacking. You don't sort of hear sort of much noise, don't see any really loud colours. The whole thing gets subdued and quietened down. You spend a lot of time with your eyes closed, or just doing walking meditation, or just looking at the forest. So you don't get so excited with those five senses. So they get subdued, they get calmed down. And as they get calmed down, they lose their intensity, then the sixth sense, your mind, gets more empowered. It gets stronger, it takes up the energy. And it gets to a point where the five senses and the sixth sense are about the same strength. And that's when the nimittas start to appear. Yeah, you can still hear, maybe still feel the body, even still have some thoughts, but they're nowhere near as strong as in your normal daily life. So because they've been subdued and the mind is getting stronger than it usually is in normal daily life, then just every now and again the mind peaks over the top, and so you can experience it, and that becomes a little flashing limiter. It's not really strong yet, but it's getting there. You still have the five senses, they haven't totally gone yet, but they've been weakened, and the mind has been strengthened. Even things like inspiration, that strengthens the mind. Remember what we were saying yesterday, Charganusati, remembering generosity, compassion, hugging a teddy bear, or just basically developing that feeling of delight, inspiration, kindness, all that sort of stuff actually empowers the mind, and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So as it does get stronger, you start to see these nimittas. Number one, don't doubt their authenticity. Whatever's in front of you is the most important thing in the world, so just let it be. And don't try and control it, because it's at that time when people sometimes they did so well, they've got a beautiful nimitta, and it all falls apart. They got so far, so close, and it's like the simile that you just slip over on the doormat to enter the jhanas. So instead of doing that, there is this wonderful simile which is worth sharing with you. And I got this from Ajahn Brahm, and it was the simile of the still forest pool. And this is how I heard it and understood it from him. It's used in many other places, but every time I've read it in some of these translations, it's not really the full anecdote. Because this comes from the time, I mentioned it yesterday, when you go wandering off as a monk through Thailand, whichever place you want to go, through the jungles especially, and that it was hot, and it was dirty, and sweaty. So you'd always try to find a place late in the afternoon, it could be a river or a lake, so you could take a bath. One of the things we always had to take with us was a little water strainer, because we had to use the water from those lakes and rivers both to drink and also to wash with. We didn't want to destroy any little animals in there. So, go to a place, find a river or a lake, and use that for bathing. And after bathing, washing a robe or two, then you just put your mosquito net umbrella maybe about 10 to 20 meters just away from the edge of the lake, because in the evening the animals would come to use that lake. And it was not so much fear of the animals, but just the animals would be afraid of the monk. And so, by putting yourself right next to the side of the river or the lake, the animals would not come out. More tigers have been killed by human beings than human beings ever eaten by tigers. So that's why the animals are terrified of the most dangerous animal in the world, us. So, that was just the training, what we were taught by Ajahn Brahm. And Ajahn Brahm used to tell his old tales of, in those jungles. Fortunately, there was still a little bit of jungle around when I was a young monk, mostly gone now. But he would say he would find a nice place, he'd put his umbrella and mosquito net just 10-20 meters away, just wherever it was convenient. And then sometimes he said that he wouldn't close his eyes in the evening. He would actually keep them open to watch the animals. There's a bit of entertainment for a monk. You did not have Discovery Channel or National Geographic, so you just had it appearing live in front of you. And so he said that he would have to sit so still, close to the forest pool, so still, because if he moved, the animals would know there was a human being there and would not come out. So he'd be very still, and then the animals would start to come out from the bushes, and they would look around and sniff, and if they couldn't detect Ajahn Chah, they would come out, maybe with their young, their cubs, and just bathe and play by the forest pool. It was always really, really good fun. And he'd watch all the animals come out, they'd all do the same, make sure it was safe, and then they'd come out to drink, wash and play. And it was very entertaining. That's one of the reasons why, National Geographic, Nature Channel, I don't know what they are, but they're very, very popular, just watching animals. And my own experience was in this monastery in the north of Thailand, and during the hot weather, the dry season, it's easy. They had some piped water there, so from a reservoir a long way further up somewhere, so that I would always put a little bowl of water out for the birds in the afternoon, just outside my hut. But this wasn't brick huts, it was just a wooden hut, and so there was a little knot hole through the wood, so I could be inside my hut and just actually look through the little hole at the birds, and they didn't know I was watching. So as I was in my hut watching through this hole, it only took 1 or 2 days, and the birds found where that water was. Really smart. But what surprised me, what I've never seen before, I don't know if this has even happened on Nature Channel, but what I found, that after a few days, the birds organized themselves. And I would look through that little knothole and see this queue of birds. Different species, big ones, small ones, all standing in queue, in line. It was really cute. And one would go into the water, seeing that they'd drink and they'd wash their wings and splash around and then do their thing. And the other one would patiently wait, the next one in the queue. And then when that one had finished, would fly away, and the next one would get in and do the same. And they'd all take their turns, so organized. Until there was always, every day, there was one bird who would come in and jump the queue. They didn't want to wait. They were big birds, and so they went into and all the other birds jumped out of the queue, and they pecked that bird, scolded him or whatever, or her, and drove the bird off. So no, the bird wasn't allowed to jump the queue. It had to keep the rules. Off it flew. And then all the birds would resume the place in the queue where they were before. It was so cute and so sort of weird. Sometimes that we sort of think that birds are just wild animals, but oh no, they've got their rules and their ability to organize themselves. It's amazing to see that. And that was in the wild, close to the Burmese border, way up in the north of Thailand. So anyway, that was the joy of seeing these things. And there's one other interesting fact, that over there in remote areas in those days, you did see some really weird stuff. And one of the strangest things which I saw there in this monastery, it was the abandoned monastery, the same place where I had my sexy thoughts idea and just decided I'd just let them be, and they all calmed down. Same place. But then one day during the rains retreat, I was in my cave, and in my hut, and there's sometimes you can feel there's something strange going on. It's not psychopaths, just what's going on. There's some electricity or something happening in the forest. And when I just went outside to go and have a look, the sky was full of birds. Just like if you look up here, you might see a bird here, but the whole thing was matted with birds. I've never seen so many birds in the sky at the same time, and I wondered what was going on. And of course you saw in the middle of them were these 2 enormous birds. Never seen anything so big. I've seen king's eagles before when I went over to Norway to find some solitude. But these were enormous birds, and 2 of them, and the pair, they were gliding, over the monastery where I was, and all the birds up there were just following them, like they were paying respect. And to this day, when I remember that, I really do believe they were Garudas. Mythical birds, huge birds. Never seen anything like that before in my life. It wasn't the aircraft, it was real birds. So sometimes these things which we say, the myths, which people discount, sometimes when you see those things with your own eyes, you think, wow, maybe these things do exist. But anyway, that was a nice little interesting little story of something a little bit weird. We only see those when you're away from the big places where human beings live. So anyway, what Ajahn Brahm was saying is that this is a great simile for how to deal with nimittas, the beautiful lights which come up in the mind. He said they're like animals coming out to the still forest pool. They're in the bush, they're in the jungle, and when they come out to visit you, if you're still enough, it's like the nimitta comes out, sometimes it's at the top, sometimes it's at the side. It's just coming out. Is she watching me? And if you move, if you think, wow, nimitta, yes, or you get feeling, ooh, a bit much for me, then of course they know you're there. And they just scuttle off into the bush. And they don't come into your mind, sometimes for days. So, if you remember that simile, it's perfectly safe. So instead you just sit there, and you in your still forest pool, your mind, and when these animals come out to play, nimittas, you let them come. Don't move. Because if you move, they'll run away again. Be still. And they're not dangerous. I just went off on a tangent when I was describing a simile of a very scary nimitta which I had a long time. It's not really scary. Just the range of nimittas which you may have. And again, telling the story helps, because every now and again someone comes up and said, oh, I saw a nimitta, it was really frightening. And I said my own experience, that once I was meditating and really peaceful, very still, and a nimitta came up. It was not what I really expected, because it was like a monster. Its tongue was out, its teeth were all sharp, dripping red stuff, must have been blood. These huge eyes, like bulging out of their sockets. Now this was a time before I knew about punks. They had really sharp hair, and going right in front of me. And as soon as I saw that, I recognised it. Because it's like those little drawings you see in the temples. When they start to try and describe the lower realms, all these demons with forks and knives and boiling you up. So, I realised what it was. But I also know that nimittas, you can mess around with them if you want. Not out of fear, but out of playfulness. So I played around with this little monster. Because the scariest part of it was, it's his eyes just really almost coming out of its sockets. So it was so similar to what you used to do as a naughty school kid. You'd get a photo there and you get a black pen and they call it doodling. So I just didn't need a black pen, just to think about it. And then over its goggly eyes, I put a pair of sunglasses. It looked really cool, like the Elvis Presley of monsters. So first I did the sunglasses, and then its teeth, just really serrated. So I just blacked a few out. So it looked like it really needed to go to the dentist urgently and get his tooth repaired. And then the corner of the eye, I put a little cigarette, and over its serrated hair, I just put like a straw hat. Like a straw hat, but with a flower coming out of it. And still, the corner of its mouth, I just willed them to turn up like it was smiling. And I forget what else I did with that demon, but after a couple of minutes of playing around with it, it looked so stupid. It looked like if it ever met another demon, it would be embarrassed and ashamed of what it looked like. I actually humiliated it. and it never came back to me ever again. I'm not going to play around with this muck. But I knew it was a creation of the mind, so I just carried on creating it and just messing around with it, making it nice and fun. So you can do that. If you're scaring them, just mess around with it. Just have some fun. You're totally safe. Or one of the other times, the other extreme limit on the other side of this, the whole range spectrum of what the mind can actually create inside itself. The other one was I was in my cave, this is 2 or 3 range retreats ago, I don't exactly know, 3 or 2 or whatever, and I was meditating there, sort of quite peaceful, getting very peaceful, very still, oh, very nice. All the 5 senses were really subdued, and this beautiful nimitta came up. I knew it was a nimitta because it was yellow, very deep yellow. One of the sides of nimittas is the colours of them. They're not just of this world. And the only way you can describe it is like more yellow than yellow. And maybe a blue or gold or white, super white. Really, no white in the world is like that. It's like taking the most purest white colour you can see with your eyes in this world and just extrapolating it, going deeper until it's more white than white. That's basically all you could describe it as. So I knew it was a nimitta because it's the depth and the beauty of the lights, but it was a shape which really caught me because it was instantly recognizable. It wasn't a monster. It had the shape, unmistakable, perfect in every detail, of Garfield the cat. In the cartoons. I must have been reading too many cartoons that day. And there it was, Garfield the cat as my nimitta. I'm the only monk who I've never known had the Garfield nimitta. And there it was. And unfortunately I blew it. I just laughed my head off. And that was the end of my meditation, that session. I told all the monks about it. So it's amazing just what you can actually do. But what I should really have done is just relax, just let it be, and then just the coarser thoughts of nimittas come out, and then later on out, if you keep silent and still, the more beautiful, rare, refined animals come out from the forest to drink and play by the still forest pool. And that's a really nice nimittas, the really powerful ones. Always simple, not like a monster, not like Garfield, just usually the simple lights. Sometimes they can start off as like sheet nimittas, which a few of you have described. But you just relax there, let it be. Don't disturb anything, don't try and make things happen. And usually just beautiful moons or suns emerge out of that background light. You just let it flow, let it go, and see how it develops. The point is, you built up the momentum. You've done a lot of making peace, being kind, letting go, and this is what's happening. So don't disturb it there. Even it might be the case that you're not got enough good karma of peace, kindness, letting go. So it means it doesn't last that long, but you just keep on going. Sooner or later you have enough momentum of you've made peace a lot, you've done everything the right way, you haven't struggled, you haven't forced, you're not tired, you're rested, haven't thought so much, you let go of the past, not worried about the future, all just the basic stuff. You put it all in line, have everything sort of together, and then sort of these nimittas come up, and sometimes they're very, very strong. So when they come up really, really strong, again, that's the time, please don't get afraid. The fear is of 2 things. It's going to places you've never been before. And you say, "Ooh, I'm not sure if I can deal with this. This is really scary," because people do get scared of going into places they've never been before, but it's perfectly safe. And the other one is just that people who are afraid of just... actually, it's part of the same thing. You're losing your sense of who you thought you were. you can't really control so much. It's not like your normal sense of being. And that can be scary for many people. But don't worry, just let it go, because your normal sense of being will come back sooner or later. Unfortunately, back to the grind again. But it's nice. And so you just let yourself go into these beautiful states. Nimitta is very, very strong. Just, again, don't do anything. Because if you do something, then of course those beautiful animals will run away. She's seen me. She's watching me. So just shh. Be so still. You, the watcher, the observer, so still that those animals don't even know you're there. And then they'll come out to play by the still forest pool. Number one, that is just so gorgeous an experience, so powerful. But it's not just for the sheer pleasure of it. You have to have pleasure in the path of meditation or spirituality. But it's a pleasure which is, it's not sticky, it's got no bad side effects. In fact, it's a pleasure which does lead to enlightenment. Because no one can sort of torture themselves or deny themselves pleasure for too long, because the mind, it's not under your control. It will just seek for happiness, seek for pleasure somewhere or other. It's one of the reasons why I think I mentioned it, but somebody picked it up in the questions and answers, I think, when they said that it's when your mind wanders off into thoughts, fantasies, because it's discontent. In other words, it hasn't got enough pleasure with what it's doing right now. I'm not talking about the sensory pleasure, I'm talking about the contentment, the fulfillment, the satisfaction, the joy, the inner pleasure. And when somebody else asked me, well, just, I've been on this retreat, a few other retreats, am I going to sort of move away from Buddhism and meditation? It's impossible. Because, after a while you get addicted to that spiritual pleasure, which is part of it. You can't really forget it. You can suppress it for a while, but you have to come back again. And so that spiritual pleasure is totally wholesome, not to be feared. And so when you do start blissing out, please let it happen. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel there must be something wrong. I'm enjoying myself. Religion, you shouldn't enjoy yourself. And for many that was the case. You have the extremist religions where you can't have music, where you can't have any fun at all. And the Christian equivalent to that was the Puritans. And the Puritans, somebody explained to me, it was a bit of a joke, but it's actually quite accurate. They say the definition of a Puritan is someone who's afraid that somewhere someone is enjoying themselves. Now that's a bit of an extreme, but it explains so much. When I was a young kid, this was in the 50s, if you went to a church, the only reason I went to a church, by the way, was that I had you wouldn't believe this now if you've been listening to my chanting the last week, but I had a really good voice when I was a kid. I even actually sang in the Albert Hall. And this big auditorium. And there was, so I was invited by the local church to sing in the choir. But it wasn't singing in the choir, that was not what I was interested in. That every Saturday there'd always be weddings, maybe one, maybe two. And imagine this really cute little young kid with a beautiful voice. And so you go there and sing all this stuff for this happy couple. And they'd look at me, I wish we had a nice kid like this later on in our life together. So they would give tips. And it was, what they say, a really good little learner, for a young sort of 9, 10, 11-year-old. And my parents, they were too poor to give me any pocket money. And so this was my little income. And, I know it's okay. I told Mum and Dad I'm going to church. They couldn't object to that. To get some moolah, to get some money. And it was all mine. And then, you looked very, very cute, sang very sweet. And that was actually how I got my pocket money when I was young. But when my voice broke, that was the end of that, little learner. But I do remember those churches were just so cold, so austere. There was no cushions on the chairs. There was, and even sometimes the sermons were just telling you what's going to happen to you when you go to hell. that wasn't very, very uplifting. Never any laughter. And that was something which I grew up with, thinking that religion. When you came to sort of Buddhism, sit still, meditate, whack. It's more of the same. So it's wonderful that eventually you found out that there's so many other types of Buddhism, and the Buddhism which is full of fun and full of joy, spiritual happiness. And to me, that even from the very beginning sounded, that must be the path. That's the sort of Buddhism I want to be in. And I told you, Ajahn Brahm, some of the things he said. Well, I told you about the story about why he wanted to become a monk. I told you that one a few days ago, because he was a little kid and he used to play monks with his friends in the village. And he always volunteered to be the monk because he never needed to do anything, he just sat there and ate. It's more to being a monk like that than that, but still as a kid, that's what he said. So it was really fun to be around, and incredibly wise as well. So get those two together, and that's just how the meditation is. You get this beautiful joy in the meditation, a lot of happiness, a lot of peace, and you can't help but smile. And that's what happens. So don't be afraid of the delight and pleasure. It's part of it. And imagine Anapanasati, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th stage of meditation, all talks about joy and happiness. So you have to get used to that, I'm afraid. Get used to the happy meditations. And they really just go so incredibly deep, so powerful. But what happens is afterwards, what's the point of that? Is it just having fun? There's more to it than that. Because the insight which comes up after you just blissed out was, what the heck was that? And why was that? Why was that just so much happiness? More than I've ever had before. Way more. And when it's, say, like nimittas, or especially sort of, the next thing which happens, go deeper inside into the jhanas, you say, well, it's because there's something is missing, something which has always been there. For the first jhana, even the nimittas mostly, it's mostly gone, but still some trace there, is your 5 senses in the body. It's not there anymore. And you soon click, you join the dots, the light bulb comes on, the eureka moment. The 5 senses have gone. Now it's so happy. The 5 senses were the problem. I've heard that so many times. So the 5 senses, the body is dukkha. It's all dukkha. Yeah, dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Suffering, suffering, suffering. And you think those monks who talk like that need a psychologist. They need to go in therapy. They're so negative. But you understand why. Because when that dukkha, that suffering disappears, there's so much freedom. Imagine you've been carrying a big heavy backpack all your life. It's always been in the back. And it's invisible, you don't know it's there. But it's so hard, you trudge through life. And it's just so tiring. It's just so difficult. And never have any energy, any peace. You can't sleep well at night, you can't sit properly. There's always an ache here, a pain there, something more to do. I've got to go toilet. I don't know why this happens. You go to the toilet and then you've got to put more food in the mouth. Can't you decide whether you want more or you want to let go? And it's endless. You've got to scratch this, you've got an itchy nose, you've got itchy foot, there's this too hot, too cold, can't sleep well at night, or whatever it is. It's just endless, this body. And then it disappears. You put down the backpack and you can dance, you can jump, you're free from this really heavy body. Now, that should sort of match with those experiences, not of meditators or even Buddhists, people who have these out-of-the-body experiences, near-death experiences. There's more and more people having these, because, where they just be put in the grave straight away, they're resuscitated these days. So you get more people who have these near-death experiences, and you see what happens to them. And it's really interesting. And he's not here. Now, if you can check this out, Nibbutto, he's a Punjabi monk, he told this really interesting near-death experience in his village. I think when he was a kid, And in the Punjab, his parents were Sikh, the Sikh religion. And so in the Sikh religion, all the guys, they usually have the surname Singh, and all the, what was it when Kasapa is Kaur, Dur or something, the girls? Whatever, anyway. And they all have the same surname. So the only way you can distinguish who's who is just by the first name. So, I think his auntie, grand auntie or whatever, someone in his village he was close to, died in the morning. She passed away. And they sort of started arranging the funeral. It was a cremation. And they were going to do it in the evening. But before they actually put the body actually on the funeral pyre and lit it, she came to. She recovered. She'd been dead for maybe about 6 or 7 hours. You can check the details with Nibbutto. And she was alive again. It really surprised everyone, shocked everyone, because to all intents and purposes she was dead. And then she told what happened. Now what happened, she said, she died, and these two guardians or demons or whatever, lords of death or whatever, they took her, and they took her to some place, to be assessed or whatever, and the head guy there took one look at her and started scolding the little demons. You've got the wrong woman. It's somebody else. Well, what was the same surname? Yeah, but it's not this one, it's another one. Take her back. So they had to take her back, and that's when she came alive, and a few minutes later, another woman, the same name, in the village died. They just made a mistake. Mistakes happen. Even to the guardians of death. They took the wrong old lady, and that's what she remembered. So some really weird stuff sometimes happens, but this particular one, it was on a BBC documentary. There's lots of documentaries about people who pass away. And this particular one really sort of caught my attention because it was really funny. Because what had happened, this woman, she was English woman, quite old, just really so sick, had many, many long-standing illnesses, which were really hard to bear, but which were not terminal. So, she could go on for a long time, but she was really sick. Very hard to sort of get by. So eventually they gave her an operation to try and fix another one of the problems, but she died during the operation, floating away. And then she met this demon or something, or this angel, and the angel who met her said, I'm sorry, madam, but you're not supposed to die yet. You've got to go back. Now, these days, people, they're not as obedient as they used to be some years ago. So she said, no way! I'm not going to go back to that piece of SHIT body. It just really hurts, it's terrible, it's painful, can't sleep well, or can't eat properly. I'm not going back. But you have to. But I won't. But you must. No. And they had this really big argument, on the psychic plane, on the astral plane or something. And they were arguing, and in the end it was settled. We know it was settled, for true, because, she came to again. She could tell everybody on the camera what happened. And she said, this demon, whatever he was, somehow he got hold of my astral body, and he literally threw me back into my real body. And I woke up. And that was a funny part, because her face screwed up. When people get really upset and angry? The anger was just like flames, coming out of her face, steam out of her nostrils, and just, when I die next time, when I really die, the first thing I'm gonna find that guy, and what I'm gonna do to him, I can't repeat on camera. I'm going to really sort that guy out. What he did to me is unforgivable. And that was such a funny little documentary. She was really upset being sent back to this body again. But what it really meant, it's such a common experience that people who do die and come back again, or remember their past life experiences, what happens after you die, it's just so peaceful, so wonderful, so free. What do I want this really heavy body for? And some bodies are heavier than others. Such a burden. But what it means is that you understand, even in meditation, when the body just disappears for a while, it's like a big weight vanished. It's like you're free, like you can fly, you're a bird, you're alive. That is one of the causes, the main cause of the bliss of the nimittas and the jhanas. Freedom from this body and its five senses. We always sometimes celebrate. Let's go and have you seen the Great Wall of China yet? You seen the Great Wall of China? I haven't. Don't need to. Got a wall outside. Bodhinyana Monastery Wall. Have you seen Niagara Falls? Victoria Falls? Who wants to see that? Just go out and have a shower. Same thing. Water falling. What else are you doing? All this stuff which people think they want to see. When you understand, I've been there, seen that, so instead you just sit down there and let seeing stop. Have you heard Beethoven's Fifth, which was performed by the German Philharmonic? This is much better. When sound stops. It's great. So, after a while, the five senses, all those insights which people tell you that that's suffering, which you can't really accept. But when it disappears, you realize this is far superior. Peaceful, deep, free, totally unscary. Now you understand some insights. And then, as I said last time, you get deeper. It's weird, that sometimes it's like you climb a mountain and you think that's the highest peak in the world, and you find there's another one behind it even higher. That's like you go through these peaks of the mind, the jhanas. That's where they call them ekagata. Eka means a single, Aga means a peak, a summit. Like Agra, that's the Sanskrit version of Agra. Agra is the capital of the Mughal Empire, where the Taj Mahal is, the Red Fort is in India. It's the peak, the capital, the top, the summit. So these are summits of perception. And if you go to one of those, you think, you can't get more than that. And though sometimes, in different places, people do get those jhanas, and they think it's a union with God, the absolute, the ultimate. You can understand that. And I often say to people, as a Buddhist, you are really sort of not treated fairly, like in other religions. Because if you got a jhana and you were, say, a Christian, you would be made a saint. You would be Saint Lucky's school for children. There will be St. Wounds Hospital, St. Lee's Academy over there. Because they think that's the ultimate. So you get to this huge place, really bliss. You can understand why. The body's actually gone. It's like you're not there anymore. And there's no sense of me anymore. And just so total ecstasy. You think, oh, that must be the ultimate, that must be God. But then what happens? You go deeper. The next peak. Another type of bliss and ecstasy. The second jhana. Weird, but you think, you go to the first, it can't be anything more than this. This is pure, absolute, the word absolute love, peace, freedom. There's more than that. Has anyone done any pure mathematics at university? That I remember just this class on infinity. And I thought, infinity, you can't have more than infinity. Infinity, by definition, is the biggest number in the world, unsurpassable. But there's very simple mathematical proofs that you can have a number infinitely bigger than infinity. And so they call the usual infinity alpha null. Then there's alpha 1, alpha 2. Alpha 2 is the number infinitely bigger than infinity. And you just go, and it just, when you actually see the proofs, you can't deny it. Our idea of infinity, there's things which are infinitely bigger than infinity. And there's also things infinitely bigger than the thing which is infinitely bigger than infinity. And it keeps on going on. It's just our perception, the way of looking. Sometimes we're so narrow. And this is what happens when you're the jhanas. You think this is the ultimate happiness, and you think there's something which is more ultimately happy than the ultimate happiness, the first jhana. It's the second jhana. And they're the reason why that's really happy. Oh, it's so still. Because the will, the choice, is gone. Do you think that choice is good? When I went to shopping when I was a young student, it's not that I didn't have enough money, there wasn't enough goods. Muesli, there's only two types. Or maybe I think one type of muesli. These days, if you go in the shops, how many brands of muesli are there? Heaps of them. So it's really hard to make the choice which one you should have. Should I have this one? Should I have that one? It brings me on to the old story, if you haven't heard this before. I believe in reincarnation, so many of my jokes get reincarnated. So this is the story about, again, the migrant to Australia. And after he got his pay packet, building site, he went to a supermarket. Wow! Supermarket! All these things he never saw in his poor home country. So one thing he saw there was instant mashed potato. All you need to do, you get this powder, you add water, hot water, you stir it up, and you get mashed potato, instant. So wow, in the old country where I used to live, we had to put the potato seeds in the ground, wait for them to grow, and when they were sort of big enough, we'd dig them up, and then you'd have to wash them, all the dirt off them, boil them, peel them, and then smash them to bits. It's a lot of work. And what happens here? Just get it off the supermarket shelf, add hot water, you get instant mashed potato. So convenient, so advanced. He went to another aisle, instant milk powder. You get this powdered milk, and all you need to do, again, add some hot water, just stir it up, and you get milk. Wow, in the old country you had to get a cow early in the morning and just get a bucket, make sure you wasn't going to be kicked, and pull its udders and get the milk from there. That's a lot of hard work. Over here in Australia, you just powder, add some water, hot water, and you get instant milk powder. What really blew his mind, he couldn't believe it, just how advanced modern society is. He went down another aisle, baby powder. In the old country, we had to get a girl, get married. There was this so advanced baby. Add water, slowly get a baby. It's a golden oldie. But anyway, so there you go. And when you get into this beautiful second jhana, the will is gone. Choice, no choice. It's gone. Nothing, not there anymore. And for many people, that's really scary. What do you mean? No will. That's who I am. Did you decide to come here today? Did you? Or were you brainwashed? Conditioned? Can you really meditate? Is it really up to you? Or is it just conditioned? We always think that we're in charge of our will. So many, ask any psychologist, and so many experiments to show just that is not the case. But the best one is you get so still. Bliss. The will is not bothering you anymore. It's not telling you what to do, not pushing you and pulling you. It's not making you restless anymore. Not giving you the thing, come on, it's only a day to go, come on, you've got to get something. You've got to sort of sit longer. Forget about lunch, just meditate. Forget about pain, come on, it's a great chance to get deep meditation. Go for it. Just bust. You're going to go. Really, just come on. Strive. And you get, we really think that is, and people who do strive and you beat your personal best. Yes. You feel so proud. You've done such a personal achievement. All that stuff, when we strive and we get somewhere, we take it as something to burnish our ego, to polish it up. I'm not these namby-pamby Ajahn Brahm retreats. I go to the real things. Vipassana. Teddy bears? What's that got to do with striving? But if you get into a second jhana, you'll understand the meaning of the teddy bears. Of why we keep just saying let go. In order to understand what we take to be ourself. And all those little attachments we have, we totally let go. The attachment to being in control, to doing, to making it happen, to sankhara. Sankhara's Ajahn Brahm, I knew it was mostly will, but he just convinced me it's just all about will. The fourth of the 5 khandhas. The will is suffering. Not me, not mine, not a self, suffering. Just like the 5 senses are suffering. Oh, you monk, what are you talking about 5 senses suffering? You really screwed up, big time. You get your head examined. You get a life. That's what happens when you're celibate for 43 years. It's suffering. But then, it's true. The body is suffering. And the will. Wow. Who wants to have a will? Where there's a will, there's suffering. Buddha said that so clearly. But I was in denial. Because, it was just, come on. With free will, that's the most important part of our guaranteed human rights. When you actually have experience, the will stops and, wow, you're blissed out. It's so peaceful not to be disturbed by yourself. You're vanishing. And that's why we have these jhanas. So then what happens after the second jhana? then it just makes the will even more just remote from you. Perfect stillness of the fourth jhana. That is called the highest mindfulness, the fourth jhana. What was it? Sati Parisuddhi. Perfect, pure awareness. Not of your body though, just of this mind. But then what happens? The idea is, which you know from ordinary life, when it's still, it disappears. When your mind is still, it begins to vanish. Your mind, the knowing, the consciousness, the mental consciousness, the citta, starts to disappear. The great vanishing act. And you see it going. And that's where it becomes really challenging. If you haven't got close to those jhanas yet, it's total, you say, and I can accept this because this is what it sounds like. What I'm saying is total gomayang. But you see, the Buddha said this too. Better not say that then. Your citta, your mind, vanishes. Not there anymore. The last thing which you thought you were, which you associated with, it's just obvious. No, I am. And then you think, no you're not. And the deeper you vanish, the more bliss. Nibbānang paramang sukhang. The extinguishing of these five khandhas, including the knower and the will, when it gets extinguished, beautiful happiness. No happiness more than that. Weird, isn't it? Sometimes you say, come on, doesn't make sense. Is that all we're here for? Just to disappear and vanish? And the answer is, yep. Really radical teachings. Totally unacceptable. Unless you've had some deep meditation. And then after a while, you go, there's something in this. Challenging. And some of you wonder now, should I really have come to this retreat? And I answer, sorry, too late now. So it'll happen eventually. And it's nice to know it's not up to you. There's no will in there anyway, so it'll happen. When it happens, who cares? It just happens. No me, no mine, not a self. So anyway, that's why we meditate. Now that is real insight. Insight which you never expected. Not what you can read in a book. Not what you can find with logic and reason and thinking. But the only thing which you can get is a weird, direct experience which challenges some of your deepest assumptions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, because I was out yesterday afternoon, I forgot to put the interview sheet down there. So the interview sheet for Saturday is now at its normal place. And whoever wants an interview, I'll be there till 10:20, and also this afternoon. Very good. So have a wonderful... and I usually say, because I wrote this in, what was it, the Art of Disappearing, I think, book or something, because they wanted a forward, so I wrote this forward, and I was in one of my sort of cheeky, playful moods, and so in the end, I said to people just my final word,